Take out the papers and the trash. I'm just kidding. This thing is anything but trash. It's the opposite of trash. But I mean, look at it. We get TVs like this all the time. I always laugh when they're in this protective black wrap. Reminds me of back in the day when you'd get mail that you didn't want people to know what it was. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Caleb Dennison, and you already know what this is, don't you? I mean, you probably saw the title of the video, but also many of you voted for this to be the next TV that I reviewed. Not saying that the Hisense was not represented. About 25% of you wanted to see the Hisense UX. So here we are with the Sony A95L QD-OLED television, also known as the King of TV, at least according to the King of TV shootout. So let's go, let's do this thing. Oh yeah, that's right. A million plastic backing pieces. Oh, look at that. The Bravia cam included. I think Sony got the memo that people weren't huge fans of the prior stand or base for this thing, because we're all about the legs for the A95L here. If you remember, the A95K had that weird stand where either the platform went out the back of the TV or out the front. And now we're just down to regular legs. We've got two different leg heights. Leave a little room for a soundbar, or just have it propped up off the cabinet because that's how you like it. Or we can go flush against the surface. Yeah, I kind of like the fact that Sony doesn't try to go for that like shockingly thin profile. It could. Sony just kind of spreads it out so that you have a uniformly thin TV. And now's a good time to talk about the remote. Backlit, comfortable, not extremely heavy. It's a solid remote. Yes. You getting that? I'm a little concerned that we're hearing that and this TV is not actually turned on. Do you think it'll happen again? Ooh, I like this. Look at the new graphics. I love the graphics with the individual settings. That's a nice touch. All right, so picture mode. Ships in standard by default. Sony's standard is better than most other standards. Then you get cinema, and then you get professional. I'm going to go with professional. Wow, I love this. We've got very clear indication that we're working on brightness and contrast and gamma for SDR. It's not making me guess whether or not we're in an HDR mode. That's gonna make setting this TV up and making adjustments really easy for me. Anyway, I've got some testing to do, and like I said, lots of TV watching to do, which makes it really simple to just dive into this review. And I'll do that by proclaiming boldly that, you ready for this? The Sony A95L QD-OLED is a 10. 5 out of 5 stars, my friends. It's the new best TV I've ever reviewed. Now stick with me because the rest of this review is going to explain why. Now, first, please note that I did not say a perfect 10. And that's because there is no perfect TV. And frankly, I hope there never will be, because if we were to reach perfection now, well then we'd have nowhere to go, would we? That sounds like a boring life to me. Perfection, however, is not among the list of qualifiers for me to give out a 10, which, if you weren't already aware, is something I do extremely rarely. So, what does it take to get a 10 score for me? Well, the A95L does it, so I'm gonna show you. This is gonna be super fun, so I hope you're ready. Now, before I get into this review, I wanted to first say thank you to each and every one of you who left comments about what you'd like to see in this review. I took them all under advisement, and I'm gonna do all I can to fit as much of that into this review as possible. However, because I think it's important for this review to stand on its own and also not be like 40 minutes long, I've decided I'm gonna keep most comparisons to other TVs like the Samsung S95C, the LG G3, and even this TV's predecessor, the A95K. I'm gonna keep that stuff for a separate video that I'm sure is gonna be like the ultimate OLED TV showdown. We've actually never done anything like this before, so I think you're gonna love it. Now, as you can imagine, that's gonna be a pretty big production, so here's what's gonna happen. As soon as I'm done with this review I'm doing like right now, I'm gonna review the Hisense UX, and then immediately after that, I'll make the Ultimate OLED TV Showdown, where I will tell you exactly what I think of the top OLED TV rankings this year. So your patience is appreciated, but I promise I won't keep you waiting long. Speaking of which, in order to make sure you don't miss that video, may I suggest that you subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell if you haven't already. That's the best way to make sure you see the next few TV reviews, all of which I think are gonna be super important. Okay, review time. Let's start with what's new for this model. So as you saw in the unboxing, the A95L is very well built. The remote feels substantial, but it's the new interface that I really love. I know my perspective on the interface is kind of skewed because I'm a reviewer and I'm rooting around in the UI way more than the average consumer. Still, I think folks are gonna love it. Under the hood, we've got Sony's very best processor and the 2nd gen QD-OLED panel made by Samsung Display. I'm gonna talk about what makes the panel itself a bit different and how that contributes to improved picture quality in just a moment. The only potential letdown as far as the build goes isn't that the TV only has 2 HDMI 2.1 ports. Personally, I don't ever need more than 2. No, the problem is that this TV uses an HDMI setup that shares one of those 2 HDMI 2.1 ports with the eARC port. And as somebody who uses the eARC port for audio output to my audio system, that means that either I really only get one HDMI 2.1 port, so I have to choose whether to plug in my Xbox Series X or my PlayStation 5, or I use one of these. This is an HDMI 2.1 8K60 switcher from MONOPRICE. It's under the BLACKBIRD brand. And I've been using this in all of my Versus videos to get the same signal out to 2 TVs. But it also acts as a source switcher. There's no latency and it comes with a little remote, so I can just connect both consoles to this and then run one line to the only available 4K 120 port on the back of the TV. Problem solved, but I really wish the 4K 120 ports were separate from the eARC port. That's nitpick number 1. Moving on to sound quality. Folks, I need to do some head-to-head comparisons so maybe you can hear for yourself, but going off the experiences I've had so far this year, the A95L is far and away the best sounding TV I've tested. It's actually got presence, dynamics, stereo effects, and punch. Yes, this TV has some actual punch. You're gonna pay more for a Sony A95L than you will for a Samsung S95C, for example, but some of that money goes to the audio system, and I'm here for it. But I also know a lot of folks are gonna connect external audio anyway, so maybe that's not really a big deal for you. Oh, and don't forget, there's a speaker level input on the back, so you can use this TV's onboard audio as a center channel speaker if you're using an AV receiver. Now, I'm just about to get to picture quality, but let me just sum up the overall A95L user experience as exemplary. It's snappy, smooth, and about as fun to interact with as a TV can get. I've not noted any quirks with how individual apps behave, as I definitely have with some of the other TVs I've reviewed this year. It's rock solid, and it feels like it's gonna last for a long time. You know, the liberating truth of the matter is that I didn't need to take measurements to know that the A95L is my favorite TV ever. At this point in my career, I can kind of just see it. But I took them anyway, because no TV review would be complete without numbers for Nit Nerds. I mean, I'm sure you can very clearly see from this test footage of me wearing the brand new Nit Nerds merch, available now, that this TV excels at color reproduction, especially skin tones, as well as black levels and shadow detail. Also, look at the HDR specular highlight that is the gleam in my eye, generated by the excitement I have over being able to share with you that a link to our brand new Nit Nerds merch store is down in the description, so that you too can sport your support and let your Nit Nerds Nation flag fly by rocking the Nit Nerds mugs, t-shirts, hats, and perhaps my personal favorite, hoodies. And look at the way the A95L genuinely conveys the subtle hints of urgency in my face, because I know you should act fast before we run out of this limited edition swag. I mean, me standing here in the new Nit Nerds merch, looking at me on the TV in the new Nit Nerds merch, it's just so realistic on this A95L that I'm having a real inception moment right now. Anyway, I believe I owed you, Nit Nerds, some measurements. Yes, I'm sure that's what's next. And a reminder to anyone who isn't into the deep data, you can skip right through this section using the time codes down in the description. You'll find them right below the link to the Nit Nerds merch store. Okay, let's do this. We'll start with peak brightness because we love to obsess over that one. Peak brightness measurements from both a 10% and 18% window, as well as the Spears & Munsell HDR highlight test pattern, came in at 1,350 nits. Now, as a reminder, that's for peak white. That doesn't tell us the story about color brightness, which is off the charts on this TV. I'm gonna show you that shortly. Full screen brightness is just over 250 nits. And I know you're all wondering, what about ABL, Caleb? Well, Auto Brightness Limiter, which is meant to protect the TV and increase its longevity, is not at all aggressive on this TV. Check this out. This is a full field white slide. We're gonna run this for a few minutes. And what we see is that the TV holds steady for well over a minute. I think we're getting into a minute and a half. And then when it does start to dim, it does it really slowly. It isn't until we get well into about 2.5 minutes, I think, that we start noticing some dimming happening. And that is at a full screen white slide, which you're never gonna do at home. The closest you'll get is watching hockey. So let's look at some hockey. Now, to keep ourselves from getting flagged, we may blur the screen a little bit, but I think you'll still be able to see the dimming in our time lapse. As you can see, it doesn't dim notably when there's action on the screen. That is a big win in my book. People have been complaining about ABL for, well, since OLED came out. Okay, that's brightness. Let's move on. In its professional mode picture preset, we'll see the expected slight crushing of the darkest grays as we move into black. This is OLED, folks. OLED compounds don't like to illuminate until they've received a certain amount of electrical charge. And that charge tends to make them jump a couple of steps down in the lowest luminance areas. You can adjust this TV to slightly raise the blacks so you can get more shadow detail if you need or want it. I think you might want to do that for video games or if you're watching really dark shows in a well-lit room. But for dark room viewing, leave the professional picture preset mode alone because it does a great job of replicating director's intent. Speaking of director's intent, as usual, Sony's mission is to make their consumer TVs match as closely as possible their mastering monitors, the insane $30,000 little displays that get used by colorists and HDR graders. Now, perceptually, just looking at it, the TV seems right on out of the box. But if you measure the white balance, it skews a bit blue. So a calibrator who wants to move this TV to meet D65 white point will have to knock the blue down a little and maybe just a touch of the red. They're pretty minor adjustments, but the results look like this. Stellar. Now take a look at these color measurements. Dead on, almost across the board. These are the best measurements I think I've ever taken. Very close to the A95K of last year, but when we move to color gamut, specifically the lofty BT 2020 color space that's very hard to achieve, the A95L is hitting between 86 and 89%, which I think might be the best I've seen. It's certainly in the top 5%. That's because the A95L and its second generation QD-OLED panel are capable of very high color purity and saturation at very high brightness levels. And you know what? I want to try and show everyone what that looks like right now. Hey everyone, I'm gonna get you back into the video in a moment. I just wanted to issue this little update because I have been made aware that some folks are experiencing some issues related to Dolby Vision delivered over HDMI on the A95L. At this point, I don't know how widespread the issue is, and I don't know the exact cause of the issue, though it's possible it has to do with the new Pentonic SoC. We'll see. Rather than speculate further, I'm gonna talk to Sony. What I can tell you is that Dolby Vision content played on internal apps doesn't seem to present the problems, and I imagine Sony's gonna issue a firmware update that handles the problem for those who have it. But having spoken with Classy Tech Calibrations, who has a video showing the problems on his unit, we'll link to that below, I wanna assure you that I'm gonna dig into this and we'll have an update for you in the other videos I'm currently making with the A95L, including the killer OLED TV shootout. In the end, my review and recommendation though, still stands. I would not hold off on buying this TV. As you'll soon see, this TV overall is a gem. I'm confident we're looking at some bugs that will soon be ironed out. Anyway, thank you so much. On with the video. So if you've just skipped ahead from the Nit Nerds section, welcome back. I was just talking about how one of this TV's best traits is its high color purity and saturation at high color brightness levels, and I want to show that off. This is a great title for that, The Greatest Showman. Very cheesy, Disney, musical on film kind of flick, but y'all, what a feast for the eyes. The lighting in this movie is epic. I highly suggest checking it out, at least on Disney Plus, if not on the 4K Blu-ray, which I also have here. Just the few moments contained in the intro segment tell a lot. First, we can see some subtle gradient changes in the lighting here, and I'm using Disney Plus just to show that we aren't seeing much color banding at all, and of course there's none on the 4K Blu-ray. Skipping ahead, this moment right here where the flames shoot out, you can see detail in the flames from white to yellow to orange to red. This is the kind of high-nit peak highlight that is prone to getting just clipped and blown out by, well, most TVs actually. You have to have a very specific set of skills to pull this off well. And then for peak white highlights, the sparklers in this wheel, look at how sparkling they are. Really impressive peak highlight work here. And because it's an OLED, all the pixels around the sparks that should be dark, they are dark. That right there is high-level, detailed contrast, and I love it. Now, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Here's a very colorful title with colors going into the BT 2020 color space, which we don't see very often, but filmmakers are starting to get playful and include colors in the home releases that we haven't seen at home before. It's hard to know that you're seeing BT 2020 color without a point of reference, but this is something I'll show off in the OLED verses. Yes, other QD-OLED TVs can do this too, but what makes the A95L different is that they are brighter than 2022 QD-OLEDs, and they are more accurate without a professional calibration than other QD-OLED TVs. Honestly, I could sit here and watch HDR content with you all day, but it's really important that any premium TV you buy makes the stuff you watch day after day look really great. And boy, does the A95L excel at that as well. I spend a lot of time talking about how no TV is a miracle worker when it comes to polishing the turds that are the SDR TV signals that we get from cable, satellite, and streaming live TV services. In fact, in the last episode of You Asked, I said that not even the best TV of the year, that's this one, can make live streaming TV sports look as good as we want it to look. But dang it, I was wrong. The A95L does a better job than any TV I've tested before it. This is Sling TV, y'all, not exactly known for its high bit rate and high bit depth streams. And folks, this stuff has never looked so good. It's the combination of the upscaling, signal cleanup, and the cleanliness of the QD-OLED panel all coming together to make streaming sports look pretty freaking amazing. If you're watching an old show that's delivered in 480p or lower, sure, it's gonna show its limitations. But the everyday streaming and cable satellite stuff that we get now, as compressed as it is, still manages to look really enticing on this TV, and I think that's saying something. Now, as for gaming, we've gotten to the point that just about every high-end TV on the market has super low input lag, at least in its game mode. Variable refresh rate support is also common, and that's also supported here. We can see from the Xbox Series X screen that all features are supported. As a TV and picture quality enthusiast, my main concern is, how does the TV look in its game mode? And as you might expect, it looks spectacular, the A95L. Does that make the A95L an outstanding TV for gamers? Well, I think for the vast majority of people playing console games, yes. But gaming enthusiasts, there's sure a lot here to love, and the picture quality and responsiveness in game mode appears excellent to me. But there are performance facets, deep stuff, that I'm just not hip to. I'll leave it to the hardcore gaming channels to tear this thing apart, but I know that I personally am not left wanting for anything, except one more HDMI 2.1 port, or at least for one of them to be divorced from the eARC port. That's my main gripe for the gaming section. This TV is just next level amazing. I usually get 3 reactions to TVs that I show off to folks. It's either, oh, as in, oh, that's pretty nice, or whoa, as in, whoa, that's really impressive. And then there's whoa, as in, I can't believe what I'm seeing here. The A95L doesn't just deliver the wow, it delivers the whoa. I've had it for a couple of weeks now, and while I might discover a few more quirks over the next few months, it's hard to imagine anything surfacing that would change my stance that this is the best consumer display that's ever been made. Does it beat the competition by a country mile? In terms of picture quality, no, it doesn't. The S95C and LG G3, for example, get very close. And for reasons we'll discuss in the big OLED TV shootout, there are a number of reasons the A95L here might not be the right TV for you. Cost among them, you're gonna be looking at $2,800 to $5,000 depending on the size. But if you want the best TV that you can buy in 2023, in my opinion, this is it. The A95L is stunning. Hats off to the engineers at Sony who worked on getting the processing on this TV dialed in. The bar has been raised, and I look forward to seeing others try to reach it in 2024. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. What do you think of the Sony A95L here? Any stones left unturned that you want to see in the OLED battle? Let me know in the comments. It's your last chance to give me suggestions. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It's a tremendous help to the channel. I'll see you on the next one, and until then, here's 2 other videos I think you might like. Anything but trash. Sorry, dumb.